Happy Friday. How are we doing, everyone? Appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. We are here live. We back. It's a new week. It's a new day. And we got some fresh faces now. The draft class of 2024 is here amongst the Colts. Before we get into everything, I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and supporting the content moving forward. We got some big things ahead of you guys, so just stay tuned, turn on your notifications. But I am not here alone. I got my guy Landon with me. Landon, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Wonderful day. The draft is over. Unfortunately, it's one of my favorite times of the year. Now it's over and we enter the slow period. But wonderful Friday. I know I talked about it before the show with you. Got the old car back up and running now. So been working on that for about 2 weeks now, and got to drive it Sunday night. So everything's turning good. It's a good Friday. It's a great Friday.
Landon said he ain't the only one shifting gears. The Colts are shifting gears too, man, but we switching it into the right
Yeah.
direction. Let's see what we can do moving forward, and let's go ahead and hop into it. But before we get into it, we got a few news to share with you straight out of Indianapolis. If you guys did not know, if you live under a rock but only watch it during the week for football season, the Indianapolis Colts gave Quiddy Pay his fifth-year option, which remains under contract. This is a good thing and bad thing because, we got to talk about the draft moving forward, but there was a lot of questions going into next year about Quiddy Pay's status and what they might do with him. But they have him under his fifth-year option. I am a fan of Quiddy Pay. I do think he has a very high ceiling, and the potential could be endless, especially with the core you build around him with Quiddy Pay that can make him, explode even more, especially when you got Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. Now we got Raekwon Davis and more pieces being added to that line. Quiddy could have a really good year next year. Now, he is very, he is a good edge rusher in my opinion. It's not the best, but I think he has some few flashes, but he is good at certain plays like run defense. I think he's really good at it. So, it's going to take some time to develop, but let me get your thoughts about, the Colts getting Quiddy his fifth-year option. What's your thoughts on Quiddy in general?
Yeah. I mean, they can afford it. So edge rush, as we know, hard position to find. You can never have too many edge rushers, and he does, have the athletic traits to be, a really good player there on the outside. Um, so yeah, I didn't know if it was going to happen or not. Uh, you know, looking at the price, I mean, 13 million, it is a little too rich for me personally, but here's the thing: if he comes out this year and he hits double digit sacks, even if it's 10, 11 sacks, that 13 million is going to look like a steal. And then you're going into next season with him already under contract, working towards another new deal. So yeah, I mean, he would have to do something he's never done and progress. But this could be a bargain come this time next year whenever we're talking about his contract extension. Um, and then just him as a player, he was first round pick. During the draft process, I wasn't necessarily high on him just because whenever you're picking a guy to me in the first round as an edge rusher, I have to have the production to match the traits. And that's just not something that he's done. And really, that's not something Chris Ballard's done throughout his time up until, what we'll talk about. It's kind of just went against my philosophy with first round edge rushers. Now, guys like that, in the later rounds, that's where you do target traits and athletic ability and stuff like that. And I do think he is elite in some areas, like as a guy that sets the edge and stops the run, like he's at the top of the league, as far as those type of guys. He is, I mean, elite at that, but he just hasn't produced as a pass rusher to warrant that first round price tag yet. And that's what you draft those guys for in the first round, to get after the quarterback. And he just hasn't produced that yet. So moving forward, the great news is he's a fantastic worker. He's always working at his craft. He has a really high athletic ceiling. Elite three cone time coming out of the drill. Combine testing numbers were great. So if he can just finally put it all together, put that pass rushing package together, and become a more complete player, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. So yeah, he's a great guy to have on your defensive line moving forward, and especially now, playing, off of somebody we'll talk about here soon.
Yes, yes, yes. I know you're excited to get into this conversation. It's going to be a
Yes.
good one because I know a lot of Colts fans have mixed feelings about him coming in. But, you know, me personally, we'll get into it in a little bit and I'll share my thoughts. But let's go ahead before we do that. We got to give out two happy birthdays. We're going to do this more often once we go live. If the day we do post and there's birthdays for Colts players, we're going to give them a shout out. So I got to give a shout out to my guy, Joseph Adai, legend in the Colts football history. Shout out to Joseph Adai. Happy birthday today. Today is his birthday. And also shout out to Blake Freeland. Happy birthday to Blake Freeland. Go ahead and give him a shout out for that.
That's a
And
that's Super Bowl champion Joseph
Joseph
Adai.
Adai. Amen. Amen to that, man. He was a legend. He definitely underrated running back. I loved his game. He was so aggressive. Um, and now let's get to the good part. We got to talk about the draft. I know a lot of people are talking about the draft already in the comment section. A lot of people are talking about Quiddy Pay already. And you know they're talking about the picks with Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith future wise. Let's go ahead and hop into the draft. So I want to go ahead and start by saying I did go to the draft. I did attend it. I wasn't alone. Shout out to Johnny, Blue Stable Brand. Shout out to Noah and Lucas as well. They are friends of the brand. They used to work with us, but they moved on to better things. You know, shout out to Stampede Blue. Shout out to those guys. Appreciate them for, you know, helping me with the Airbnb, spending time with me. It was an ultimate experience, and I definitely had fun. Big Sean concert, seen a few celebrities. We seen AJ Hawk there, Darius Butler. I ran into Santana Moss. I've seen Kofi Kingston as well. It was a star-studded event. It was a lot of celebrities, so I did have fun. And that wasn't even the best part. The best part is that the Colts, in my opinion, had a really good draft, and this draft took a lot of people by surprise because a lot of people. I think Ballard did a lot of moves that Colts fans weren't expecting. And I think, you know, this is the changing of the guard. I think it's going into a different direction future wise for the Colts. And let's go ahead and hop into what they did, you know, draft wise. So in the first round, they took the first defensive player off the board, and it was the edge, Latu, out of UCLA. Edge rush, you know, a lot of people was thinking DB, a lot of people was thinking safety, you know, corner, but they took the first the edge rusher out of the draft, and he happens to be one of the good ones. And of course, he had an injury history, so it took a lot of speculations. But I think, you know, after talking to him, I did have a chance to, you know, have be in the presser with him. And, you know, the guy was motivated. Like, he was motivated. He was ready to go to work. He's locked in. And if you actually watched him on film and the traits and the abilities that he has and how good he is, you can see why he was the first person off the board. Like, this is no knock. I think it was 1A, 1B when it comes into that conversation of who was the best edge rusher coming out the draft. But I think he really has a high upside and the potential that he can bring to this edge rush that the Colts need. I think he's going to work out very, very well. But I know you have more insight than I do. Like, you're the draft guru. If I need questions, I'm coming to you. So definitely share your thoughts on the pick and, you know, what the potential he can bring to the Colts.
Yeah, so Leatu Latu. You know, this to me was a fantastic pick. And not only was he the first edge rusher taken in the draft, he's the first defensive player at pick 15, which is something we've never seen before. 14 offensive players in a row to start the draft. That is just wild to be sitting at 15 and have your choice of defenders. Like, that's just crazy. So, going into this year, going into the process, really all the way through February, he was my number two guy. It was, you know, Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, and then Jared Verse. And those were like the three guys, you know, in the first round. All had a little bit of different flavor to their game. Of course, you know, Dallas Turner, you're looking at long athletic traits, you know, kind of like what we're talking about with Quiddy Pay. He's a guy that's just built in a lab, you know, and he just hasn't put it all together yet and really been dominant, you know, in college. Didn't, you know, has the athletic traits, didn't have, you know, the upper tier production. Then you get into Jared Verse, another, you know, really great athlete, just didn't have the pass rush chops. Really great run defender, more of a power guy, beat you with leverage and power to speed or speed to power rushes. Um, but he one of those, and this is the case for most, you know, edges coming out of the draft, is they don't really have a lot of counter moves. You know, they have that one move they use to dominate college, and then they get to the NFL, and these guys know how to stop that one move, and they don't, you know, they don't have a counter for it. So that's something that, you know, they learn as they go through the league. Latu, the reason why he wasn't my number one up until the combine was, like you said, the medicals, because it's a guy that he was medically retired by his university whenever he played at Washington due to a neck injury sustained in practice. And he, you know, he thought he or well, he didn't think he would never play again. He knew that he was going to play again, which is what's great about it. And they just needed somebody to sign off, and everybody was so worried about it. Even I had my worries. It's like, man, like you know, this is a dude that got medically retired in college, and I mean, everything is there. I mean, the athleticism. Now he didn't test great at the combine in shorts, but if you look into the athletic testing numbers on the field, where they track, the speed and the bend and all this stuff from these guys, he ranks as a 99 percentile athlete while he is on the field actually playing football, not wearing shorts and a t-shirt running in a combine. So he's an elite level athlete on the field. And then his production is like second to none. I mean, you're talking about, where he's up there. And I know we talked about this on draft night. I mean, if you look at his pass rushing numbers and even getting into like the analytics and stuff, he's up there with guys like Nick Bosa, Miles Garrett, um, those type of rushers. And normally those guys are getting picked, second overall, third overall in the whole draft. And that's what really the hangup was to me was the medicals. And once the combine news came out, and I did a little bit of digging while the combine was going on, talked to some people and stuff, and all the medicals came back glowing. There was like, look, he's good. Like there's no worries. And this was a guy that when I've talked about it and it's been out now for a little while. And I knew about it because of Dane Brugler's The Beast. It's how I found out, which is a great tool for anybody that subscribes to The Athletic. But he actually played rugby while he was medically retired. Um, and he played one of the most physical positions in rugby. If you know anything about rugby, it's a really fun sport. I'd suggest everybody check it out. Netflix has a great documentary as well right now. And he played the 8 position, and it is like seriously one of the most, if not the most physical position in rugby, and that's where he played. So clearly no issues there. And once he got UCLA, I mean, he took off, and that's all the guy needed was a chance. And it's not just like this 1 year wonder of pass rushing production. He's done it 2 years in a row. So like, hey, this isn't just like a 1 year thing. Like this guy's dominated now 2 years in a row, played healthy, no issues at all. And once those combines came out, he automatically jumped, up to where it's like this guy's clearly my number one edge rusher, and he might be the best single defensive player in this draft now that the medicals came back clean. So I know it surprised a lot of people. The Colts taking an edge, and I don't really think it should have, because this is a team, while they broke the sack record last year, you see all the production with the sacks, they ranked 28th in pressures or pressure percentage, and you know, on the year. And that's just, there's a lot of luck in getting sacks whenever you're not generating pressures. And we kind of saw it fall apart there. They picked on some really bad offensive lines there in the middle of the season. And then the last 2 weeks, we got to see, CJ Stroud, he had all day to throw. Like nobody could get pressure on him. It was, DeForest Buckner getting like triple teamed, and then nobody else was doing anything. So you combine the fact that they needed pressures, they needed consistent edge rush, and on top of that, they tried to sign Danielle Hunter this offseason to a massive deal. So clearly they were not sold on that position right now. Um, so yeah, they ended up drafting, to me, the best edge rusher, probably the best overall defensive player in the draft. And I think this is a guy that he has so many counter. I mean, like this dude's got counter moves upon counter moves. He can go like 4 or 5 deep in the bag to beat you. And as a rookie, like that is so rare to have that type of development already. And this is stuff that he learned on his own. This is not stuff that he was coached on. This is stuff that he sought out to learn on his own time and developed on his own. And that's just bodes so well for when you get in the league. And like you said, whenever you interviewed him, you said like this is a guy that's just ready to work. And I think that retirement actually plays into it, because he had the thing he loved the most taken away from him, and he fought so hard to get back. This is it, and I'm super excited. I think this guy right away, like year one, I think he could get double digit sacks year one.
Oh yeah, I agree absolutely. And then when you think about it, it's like, what better position can you put one of the best edge rushers in the draft than with the Indianapolis Colts, pairing him with the guy that gets triple teamed that you just mentioned, DeForest Buckner, getting double teamed to triple team almost every other possession, which frees up, Latu coming off that edge. Like, and this is a guy, when you mention him being retired from, the game that he loves, he has all the time in the world to study film and practice these things. And at the draft, he talked about, studying guys like Aaron Donald of the world, the Bosas, and all those things.
Max
And,
Crosby.
Max Crosby, and, training with those guys as well. It's like this guy is ahead of the game. And, he was talking about, even on the channel, if you look at the Blue Stable, the pressers up there, he's pretty much talking about, how he studies the offensive lineman's moves, position by position, talking about playing at each spot and pretty much knowing the tendencies. Like, he had me locked in. I was ready for the season to start tomorrow. That's how motivated he was. And we there was a question asked which quarterback would he want to sack first. He mentioned Brock Purdy. I thought it was hilarious. And then they talked about the Chiefs. They mentioned Mahomes getting all these speedy receivers, and what would you do if you match up against him? And he was like, well, the speed receiver sounds good, but if I'm on the field, Mahomes not getting the ball off. And I was like, you know what? I want the season to start tomorrow because I was ready. Like, he had me locked in, man. I was cheesing, smiling ear to ear, just listening to him talk, man. He was so motivated and blessed, talking about how proud he was, and how ready he was to be on the field. So
How about that tattoo? I mean,
that
you
tattoo,
got
the
that
horseshoe, he got the horseshoe tattoo right
yeah,
after,
like the
man.
dude's
And
just ready to go. Like, how about
yeah,
that tattoo? So,
yeah,
yeah, he's locked and loaded, man. I'm super
he's locked
excited.
in.
Um, Now he's not without faults. There are some things there, especially setting the edge like Quiddy Pay does. He's almost the exact opposite of Quiddy Pay. Like literally the polar opposite, where Quiddy Pay is like this great guy against the run, has all these, elite athletic, crazy traits, and he just hasn't put it together. Latu's almost the opposite, where like he's not going to test. He's still tested really. I mean, he's a really good athlete. Still had a RAS like 8.5 or something like that. So, but it's not like the 9.98. Normal Chris Ballard draft pick. So he's not a guy that's going to test well in shorts, but you know he produces on the field.
Yeah, it's different when
And
them pads come on.
yeah, exactly. It's so different, and he's somebody that, like I said, he can step in where he still has to work on setting the edge, getting his play strength up, and all that kind of stuff. But once he gets that settled, then I mean, there's no. It's gonna sound crazy, but like, there's no reason to think like this guy can't be one of the, if not the best pass rusher in the league. Like we're talking about, Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Miles Garrett. If he finds a way to set the edge and can get that play strength up a little bit, he can be in that class. And those guys are so rare to find, especially at pick 15. So yeah, I was elated with the selection.
Absolutely, amen. And this is another pick we got to talk about that we may have the same reaction to. We thought he was going to be off the board earlier. There was a lot of talent on the board for centuries in this draft, and it was so much talent that got left off towards the end. But the Colts wind up picking up another good piece in the draft. Wide receiver Adonai Mitchell. This was a guy that Colts fans was talking about, raving about before the draft if he was available to go get. And Ballard went out there and went to go get him. He was surprised he was still available. I mean, if you looked at with the next pick that the Colts dropped, he was surprised he was still there. The Colts wound up getting him a wide receiver out the draft, second pick, second round, pick 20 out the draft. So this is a guy that I think to fit the dynamic of this offense, I think he's the perfect piece to add to it. There was a tweet I think you retweeted yesterday or today when it was talking about the most used, the teams that used the three wide receiver package the most, and the Colts was like top five. And you add him in there with a Michael Pittman Jr. and a Josh Downs or even a Alec Pierce, and it's like one of the things that Richardson's going to need is a guy to go get it. If you launch the ball down the field, who's going to be able to go get it? And I think when you got a guy like Adonai Mitchell, I think that's who I think of. I think he's the perfect piece to add to it with a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. who consistently is going to have pressure put on him, or maybe the top corner. adding him to that dynamic to to open up the field. I think he's the perfect piece for that. So, what was your thoughts on the coach, selecting the Donnie Mitchell, and your thoughts on him in general?
Yeah, well, I thought it was tremendous value for where he was. I was a little bit lower on him than probably a lot of people. Um, you know, everybody was thinking like he was going to go in the first round, in the 20s, all that kind of stuff. And I had a second round grade on him. So, and then now it was a higher second round grade. I figured, somewhere, 30s, 40s, but for him to drop to 52, I believe it was 52. It was really good value for the pick. And this is the pick, though. I think, I don't want to like rain on anybody's parade, but I think we need to kind of like temper expectations a little bit for him because uh, he's a guy like his combine numbers are insane. Like I think if you look at the RAS score, he ranks like fifth overall out of like since they've been testing, going all the way back to like 1980 something. Like he's like five overall, like the height, weight, speed, freak. And the good news is too, like he has a drop percentage of like he's had one drop in like the last 2 years. So which is nuts for a guy
Him
that's
and Josh Down
targeted.
got glue his hands.
Yeah, like I mean, very reliable hands. But this is what I'm saying. I do think we need to temper expectations for him, and I don't think just right out the gate, Alec Pierce is just going to be set aside and he's just going to be inserted into that role. It's something he's going to have to earn, and he does have a lot of development that he needs to do on the field. And mainly just route running. Now, like he is a guy like he has something with his route running that I think all great wide receivers have. Like, and that's the fact that he's able to maintain his speed in and out of his breaks. He doesn't have to slow down and stop to get in and out of his breaks. Which, whenever you get to this level where these corners are just so athletic and so fast, if you can maintain a step on a guy whenever you're cutting in and out of breaks or hitting double moves or something, and you have that type of acceleration and stuff like that is crucial to have to be a successful wide receiver. And all great wide receivers have that trait. AD Mitchell has that trait, and I think that's going to be his bread and butter. And I tweeted something out about it, during the draft and all that. And then Jim Bob Cooter actually spoke on it yesterday. He said, whenever we were watching, the thing, that's what he was saying is like that's kind of what they targeted, and because I think that's the difference with Alec Pierce is Alec Pierce has this tremendous straight line build up speed where it takes him a minute. He doesn't just explode off the ball or out of his breaks and stuff like that. He takes a minute to get going. Once he gets going, I mean, you're cooked because the dude's so fast. But it does take him a minute to build it up. Where AD, it's just kind of just immediate. Like he's just got that burst where it's like as soon as he's off the line, like he can hit full speed quick, and he doesn't have to slow down. And I think if Reggie can rein in some of the lackadaisical effort and which I don't think it's like a question of like his effort or anything. I think it's more, and he kind of spoke to this at the combine where he was saying he doesn't necessarily run every route at full speed because he likes to conserve his energy throughout the game so he's able to just maintain that level of play. But once you get into the NFL, if you're not running every single route and getting through your entire package at full speed, you're going to be at a big disadvantage because, like I said, these corners are so athletic, and and these guys are just dogs whenever you get to this level. And if you're not going 110% on every single play, it's an uphill battle. So I think that's something that is going to have to be fixed and changed. But once you give him some time to develop, I think you're going to see a lot more of like 60-40 fit. I don't know if it's going to be 50-50, but I think you're going to see like a 60-40 split this year between him and Alec Pierce, where I think a lot of people are just kind of putting him in at the X and saying like, all right, here's our guy, let's go get it. I don't think that's going to be the case. But the good news for him is this RPO Shane Steichen style of offense, a lot of the times that X receiver there on the outside, you're going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups. And if he can be a consistent guy that separates from those one-on-one matchups, which I think he has that ability, because if you're just looking at pure talent and pure athletic ability and the reliable hands, he's got talent to be, he can be a top 10 wide receiver in this league if he gets everything put together. But it's just going to take some time. So yeah, that's a great pull right there. So athletically and the way that he gets in and out of his breaks, that's my ceiling comp. Now I'm not saying he's going to be that guy, but
Oh yeah,
um
100%. I understand.
but just he reminds me a lot of CD Lamb um with the way that he runs and the way he gets in and out of his breaks and some of his route packages and stuff like that. He doesn't have anywhere near, at least in college, he doesn't have anywhere near the production, especially the yards after catch production, in college that CD Lamb has. And CD Lamb has that elite ability after the catch. And that's not something I saw from AD Mitchell. But that's not to say he can't do that because Texas's offense, as we saw, um, whether it was the route tree that they asked him to run, or whether it was Quinn Ewers throwing the ball behind him or above him or something, and he had to go make
Good
a
old
catch.
Ewers.
Yeah, he wasn't really put in very great situation. I believe this guy had, I mean, I want to say it was like 16 and a half yards per attempt whenever he was targeted, which ranks out of, I mean, you're talking about thousands of wide receivers in college. I believe it ranks seventh overall in the nation, seventh highest yards per attempt. So it's not like he's getting, these force fed, these screens and slants and out breaking routes and, this, all these routes and plays that are really conducive to that yards after the catch. All that went to Xavier Worthy. So that's not to say he can't do this, which we're going to find out if he can. But I think for the pick where it was, yeah, I think it was tremendous value. And I think, like I said, he's got the perfect coach in Reggie Wayne. And if Reggie Wayne can just clean up some of that route running, clean up, the effort and get him to run 110% at the NFL level on every single play, and he can get that out of him. This this guy can be a top 10 wide receiver in football. He has that kind of ability. Yeah, there it is. Great pull once again. Um, that's what I was saying, and like I said, I tweeted something similar last week during the pick.
Yeah, I was
He's a
looking.
guy that, yeah, he's which it was a reply. It was a reply to somebody because they asked me about him. Um, but yeah, I think he has this fantastic ability, at the top of his routes that, he doesn't have to slow down and make those breaks and those cuts. And that's one of the main differences when it comes to separating at the NFL level, which is why you see guys like Alec Pierce who had, really great combine testing numbers, ran really fast in the 40 and all that stuff, but he hasn't been an elite separator at the NFL. He just hasn't been able to get separation at a consistently high level, and that's something that maybe he'll work on. Happy birthday the other day too to Alec Pierce. He just turned 24 years old, so he's still only 24 years old, which is crazy. So a lot of development left for him too. So um, we're going to see which one of these guys comes into camp. It creates great competition, and um, whoever wins, I think this is probably the best this wide receiver room has been. You even going down to one of the other draft picks we'll talk about, and then also having Ashton Doolin back. I mean, you've got five, six guys deep that I
Ballard
think you could
cooking,
throw
man.
out
Ballard
there.
cooking.
Yeah, I mean, you got six guys deep that I think you can throw out there and feel really good about.
I agree 100%, man. This team, like when you look at it on paper, if you take away all the injuries and everything, it's like this team can compete with anybody. Like hands down, they just got to stay healthy. I think that's the true perception of having just being taken to the next level. You can say that for any NFL team. So to have that expectation or that confidence going into next year, saying I put this team up against anybody, that's a good feeling to have. So we got to get into these next two picks. I'm gonna pair them together because You know about them more than me, and I'm not gonna lie. That draft room, when this name was mentioned, everybody was like, so I mean, they got a high upside, So this is definitely something out of this. Got to be like, what is Ballard doing? So the next pick, the Colts drafted offensive tackle Matt Gonclaves, and then the pick after that, they doubled down the offensive line. They got a center and got Tanner Bortolini. So these two picks, the third round pick with the Matt Gonclaves pick, I was kind of like, I don't know. So I mean, but the Taylor Tonalini, I get it. With the Ryan Kelly situation and everything moving forward, you're gonna have to start looking in a different direction eventually. So, the Matt Gonclaves pick though, I didn't understand. I know he got
I
high
believe it's
upside moving forward.
Gonzalez,
Gonzalez,
not Gonzalez, Gonsalves.
Gonsalves.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, because I do
Matt
not know how to
Matt
pronounce it.
Gonsalves and Tanner Bortolini. Sounds
Bortolini.
like
Yes, I got the
a
Bortolini one, but the
great
Gonsalves.
Italian dish.
Yes, yeah.
Even
See, we
though
can
he's
add
not
that
from
too.
he's not from New York or Italian, but
No,
fantastic last name there.
but we can have that as a food option under the Grover wings for sure. So that's all I'm
Yes,
thinking about.
Bortolinis and Grover wings.
Grover wings, yes.
Yes.
I still wanted Kool-Aid McKistry on the menu, but it's okay. So, but it's all right. We're gonna move
You would
on.
have if we took Kool-Aid in the first or second round, we would have
Yes,
like the greatest restaurant-based team
you can
in
ask
the NFL.
anybody in that draft room. That was the only thing I was preaching. I was like, Grover wings and Kool-Aid, Grover wings and Kool-Aid. I was so annoying, but yes, that was the thought process. But what is your thoughts on both of those? The Colts doubling down on offensive line, back-to-back picks. What are your thoughts on both of those
Yeah.
players?
So as far as taking offensive line back to back, I think it's a really smart strategy. Because you know, whenever you're looking at um, the offensive line and all the depth around the league, it's just not there. And Gonzalez, yes, yeah, we'll get it eventually. We'll land on it. Um, but as far as the pick goes, yeah, offensive line, the depth in this league is just it's so crucial, and we saw it last year. We've seen it the last few years, really, with the Colts, and they mostly stayed healthy, but Braden Smith, you know, he was hurt last year, and we've seen Ryan Kelly deal with injuries. We've seen Quentin Nelson deal with injuries. We've seen Will Fries, miss a game or two every now and then. So it's such a difficult thing to do in the NFL to be able to go, you know, 7, 8 deep along the offensive line and feel good about, your talent, because a lot of the times an offensive lineman gets hurt and you're bringing a guy in and everybody's watching the TVs going, that guy's about to get picked on the rest of the game. Everybody knows that's the guy you target.
Sorry, Matt
Um,
Pryor. Sorry.
yeah. And so now, you know, I don't think that's the case anymore. And you still have Blake Freeland, who has all the athletic ability in the world. He just had, he had to develop strength. He had to get that anchor. And it was kind of very similar to Bernard Ryman's first year, where Ryman had all this ability, but he just didn't have the play strength and the anchor. He developed that during the offseason, and we saw how wonderful he played last year. And I think Blake Freeland now has a chance, because everything that I've heard is he's really worked on his strength and his anchor, and that's developed this offseason. I think he has a strength or I think he has a chance to take a big leap forward this year. And so you had Blake Freeland, you have Matt Gonzalez now going in, and he's a guy that I thought it was a little bit of a reach, if I'm being honest. I had a handful of offensive linemen ranked above him at that spot, especially where I think he's going to have to end up playing, which is on the interior. I think he's going to end up translating more as a guard, because his foot speed and play speed is just not there. You watch some last year, well, he only played 3 games last year, which is another concern. But the year, prior to that, whenever he was playing, uh, he dominated in the run game. He just has fantastic play strength. Like, that's not something he's going to have to develop. He's going to come in day one and be an absolute mauler in the run game. Like, once he gets his hands on you, it's a wash. The thing that he really struggles with is off the edge is speed. because his foot speed and his athleticism is just not there yet. And it might not ever be because just the athletic limitations. Um, and once he gets that, that technique down a little bit, maybe he can be put on the outside at tackle. But I think he projects inside more. And I think you're going to place him at guard. And if you get that guy inside, at guard, I think he has a lot better chance to make a really big impact. And because, like I said, his play strength and his hands and um, he's a guy too. I believe he hardly ever had a holding penalty called against him. I don't think he wasn't penalized a lot in college,
That
which
killed
is
the Colts
really
a
hard to
lot
do.
last year.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, he wasn't really penalized, during his career in college. Um, so I think if you get him inside and you let him develop, I think you have Blake Freeland that can play the tackle spots. You have Gonzalez who could play either guard spot and kick out the tackle in case of an emergency. But he's really going to struggle with those speed rushers just because he just doesn't have that ability. Then you get to a guy like Tanner Bortolini, who is almost the exact opposite. Yeah, Bortolini. Uh, it's almost the exact opposite where he's another guy like he doesn't have the play strength. He gets bowled over by bull rushes. He has a really hard time holding his anchor, but his athletic ability on the interior is just it's wild how athletic this guy is. Um, and yeah, so here, good pull by DSG Goodbar in the comments. He was only penalized 4 times in his college career. All of them were false start penalties, not a single holding penalty. That's really hard to do because I believe he had over 1,000 snaps in college in his career. So 1,000 snaps, 4 penalties, all false starts, which can be also be like a quarterback thing too. So it's not even necessarily all on the offensive line. It could be a center snapping the ball, could be his quarterback, all that. But going back to Bortolini, his athletic ability and his movement skills for an offensive lineman are just they're nuts. I believe this is a guy that broke Jason Kelsey's combine record for the shuttle time. And so I think if you can put him in at center, which I do think he struggled a little bit as well last year as far as like snapping the ball. A lot of his snaps were kind of off target or high. So he's going to have to work on that, which that can be taught, but you cannot teach what he brings you in athletic ability. He can get stronger. He can learn to snap the ball. He can't learn to move like that. So you can, plug him at guard. You can plug him at center. Um, and he's going to be able to pull. And you watch a lot of like Eagles film when Shane Steichen was the coach, and you would see Jason Kelsey actually being the guy that pulls instead of the guard. Which when you have a center that can do that, you open up some really crazy blocking schemes and combinations for your offensive line, and you can really get an advantage. Running the football and get out in space, and especially with a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's going to be running the ball as well. So, yes, fantastic mullet as well. I'll say Gonsalves too. He had one of like my favorite draft calls I think I've ever heard. And I think both these guys have just a fantastic mentality as well. So, um, while I did think both picks were reaches where they were picked, I don't think they're bad players. And that's just based off my board too. So every board's going to be different. So whenever you're getting, really once you get out of like those top 50 picks, everybody's boards is going to be like all over the place, right? So like one guy might have this guy ranked as a 5th rounder, but one team might have him as a 3rd rounder, and he's going to go in the 3rd round, and he could be a really good player. Look at Puka Nakua last year, 5th round pick. So just where you're picked, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is the
A guy you
situation.
loved at the Senior Bowl. Just had to
Yeah.
add that in.
Yep. Yeah. I was a big Puka Nakua guy. I I was on him back in like
I
January.
can vouch. Yes,
Yeah.
I was a witness.
I was on him in January. Um, Loved him. Would have loved for him to be Colt. But really, like a Puka Nakua, it really depends on what situation you're going to and how that team has a plan to use you. And I think the offensive line room and Tony Sperano Jr., who I absolutely love, by the way. Every time he's on camera, I think he's like the funniest dude ever. Like the guy is like built to be an offensive line coach in this league. Like the way he looks, the way he sounds. Sorry, my dip pouch. um, the way he sounds, like everything about him is like the funny. Like I love the guy, and I just think once he gets his hands on these guys and can mold some of their weaknesses into where they're not a weakness, and he's going to put them their strengths in a position to succeed. And I think Bortolini at center or guard, you have Consalves who can play guard at a high level. I think he's going to be a high level guard. Um, and can kick out and play tackle in case of emergencies. And then you have Freeland who can play tackle as well. And I mean, if you have 8 or 9 guys on your O line that you can feel good about going in there, you're ready to cook.
I agree. Amen. And look, speaking of Cook, we got to talk about this next one, right? So we just mentioned
Oh man, here
we
we go.
mentioned Latu, we mentioned Adonai Mitchell, we mentioned Matt and Tanner Bortolini, but this next pick, ladies and gentlemen, talk about track star Anthony Gould is an Indianapolis Colt. Now, when he took this pick, I was like, "What is
And
he doing there?"
you did pronounce that correct as well.
Oh,
It's not
thank you.
gold, it is Gould.
Gould, yes.
Yes.
So when he took this pick, I was like, "Whoa!" And I was like, all I can think about is the ideas that Shane Steichen can create with this offense with him, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs. Like the opportunities is endless. This dude is a speedster. And I know he's going to have so many highlight plays when he gets his opportunity to step on the field. He's going to be dynamic. What was your thoughts when the Colts selected this track star?
All right, so I love the pick. And so here's the thing too. Whenever I was watching the UCLA Oregon State all 22 tape, because I was doing, you know, Latu tape, and also Fuaga, who he was going up against in that game, who was also the pick of the Saints. He got picked right before Latu. So both those guys went head to head in that game. And I remember watching, Latu on defense, and there would be a play made or on the outside at wide receiver, and it just seems like this guy was just always making plays, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" I was like, "Because like he's fun, like he gets open, like his explosion out of his initial routes and his initial stuff is like really great, and he's constantly getting open against these UCLA corners, and they're getting in the ball, and I'm like, who is this cat? Anthony Gould. So I started looking up some stuff. I want to say back, this was early February or so, and started watching a little bit more of Oregon State. And I was like, man, I really like this guy. Like, I didn't want to put him in my top 10 receivers in the class because I didn't think he was there just yet. But I mean, I loved him. And whenever that name got called out, during draft night, dude, this might have been my favorite pick of the draft. And everybody's like kind of like pigeonholing him in as well, like he's going to be the new special teams, punt return, kick return, the new role with kick returning. Um, sorry, phone call. Uh, everybody's kind of pigeonholing him in as this guy, but I think he's got some juice on the outside, man. I do. I think he can make an impact at wide receiver on the field. Um, and like I don't think he is just a special teams ace. Like I really do think once he gets and he's also a guy too, like for his size. I mean, you look at his size, well, he's like 5'8", 160, 170. Um, for his size, he wasn't like this slot guy at Oregon State. Like he played on the outside and he cooked dudes like consistently. And it might not be that way in the NFL because, like I said, these corners are so good, and that size is going to hamper him a little bit. But if they don't get their hands on him right away, like he's a guy that can hurt you really quickly. Um, and I think he has a really good chance to be really successful in this league, not only on special teams. I think he can be a really good wide receiver. And once you get the ball in his hands, he kind of can, he turns into like that returner on offense that he is on special teams. And once you get the ball in his hands, he's electric. and I'm so excited. I had two favorite picks in this draft. As much as I love Latu, he actually wasn't one of them. It was this guy, and then one of the other guys we'll talk about here in a few picks were my two favorite picks in this draft. And so I'm super excited about Anthony Gould. Super
Yeah,
excited.
yeah. Same here. When I was like, this dude could be dynamic, and I think he has a high success rate versus press coverage. So it's like one of those guys you could throw in a scenario like those big third down plays that used to haunt us. Like imagine a third down possession with him and Alec Pierce. Well, both of those guys have a good high catch radius where you could just throw the ball and I can go get it. So I think both of those guys are very special. And I think they mentioned a comp like Isaiah McKenzie, the guy we just lost. I think he's a great replacement. So it's
Mhm.
going to be perfect moving forward to adding him to this dynamic roster of an offense that I just love and I'm excited to see when
And
it
then
hits
with the
that
new
field.
role, I
Yeah.
know we were talking about, all that,
Hmm.
but like it really is a big benefit. He is a guy like, and even at the East West Shrine game or the Shrine Bowl, he took a return for a touchdown in that game, and that's with some high level NFL draft pick caliber competition there. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really fun player for this Colts team.
Absolutely, man. Whenever a player can make you smile like that, it's just something you would love to see moving forward. And to talk about these next two picks, because we're going to pair them together, special teams is not going unnoticed. As Colts fans, we appreciate our special teams players. Shout out to Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, because that's you start from the bottom, and now you're here. So shout out to them.
Austin Doolin,
Asher Doolin from the
another
bottom, and look what he got. So you got to make your way out there, make that impact, and then you'll get your name called. And when that opportunity comes, you make that impact known. So the next two picks, are athletic picks in my opinion. So we're gonna go with Jalen Charles and then Jalen Simpson. Both I think were athletic picks. I think they can be one of those some of those gunners moving forward. What was your thoughts on both of these two picks? After the Gould pick.
Yeah, so Carly's he's a lot he's very similar to an EJ Speed pick. He's he's a guy that had tremendous ball production, off ball production in college, passes defense, the interceptions, all that. So he's a guy I think you can throw out on those nickel packages to cover tight ends right away. And they've already announced he was going to be converting to linebacker, which I think is a really good thing for him because I don't think he has the initial speed to play safety, but I do think he has really tremendous athletic ability as a linebacker to be a coverage guy. And so that's something that this team lacked in their linebacker depth. They lacked a guy that could go out there, get interceptions, get his hands on the ball. Oh my gosh, my phone is going crazy. It's always during this. My phone will stay bone dry until we hit live. That's just the way it
Every
works.
time. Every
Every
time.
so so yeah, I thought it was a really smart pick. Really good selection. The other guy is my second favorite draft pick of the draft. Um, because whenever I was watching very similar to the Anthony Gould, I remember watching Brock Bowers film. And one of the games I watched was Georgia versus Auburn. And I actually put a clip up, a few days ago about it um, from some of the film that I had in that game. And Jalen Simpson, they avoided him almost entirely all game. Like they would throw quick screens to get the ball out quick. They wouldn't really throw to whichever side that he was rotating to. Um, and whenever they did, there was one play where they actually did send Brock Bowers up the seam into the red zone, into the end zone actually um, for a passing play, and Simpson just read it beautifully, pass break up on Brock Bowers. I was like, man, like this guy's really good. And then he had another similar play um, where he read the defense. I mean, just instantly, like he knew exactly what they were running, went up, made the tackle like almost instantly. Um, and I think that's where the biggest growth needs to be from him is his tackling ability. Yeah, so is this play right here. So this is when I was watching Brock Bowers film, and you can see like boom, he's right there, and that's on Brock Bowers. So I was like, man, like that's a really good play. Let me check out more of this. And then if you go down to the second play here at the bottom, and pull this up. So this, like, watch how he diagonal, like instant, boom, right there. Like he knew exactly what they were running. Um, and if you can clear up that tackling issue, because he's a guy like he did seem to avoid contact, like he wanted no part of tackling, which is something he's going to have to do. But I've seen that maybe they'll play him at cornerback. I think he projects as more of a deep field free safety, where he can read, sit on that back end, read and react, to the quarterback and to the offense, and make plays on the ball. Because I think he has that really strong skill set for that. Has really good length as well. Not necessarily the tallest guy. I think he was 5'11", just a hair under 6 foot, but he has really long arms, which is really good at that position. So, excuse me. So I think he has a chance right away to be a really good special teams guy. If he makes this roster, it's gonna be a tough roster to make, but I think there is some talent there. To where I think if they throw him out there at free safety early on, um, I'm not going to feel bad about it. And he has a chance to develop as well to be a really good player. I love this pick. I love seeing it.
Absolutely. The later picks in the draft also, all of these guys have an opportunity to take their time to develop and get into that untapped potential that they might not reach as soon as they jump out the gate. So
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough roster to make too. I mean,
yeah.
this is actually a you know ex- except for going to like with the secondary, because I think that's where like the clear weakness is.
Mhm.
Every other position on this roster is, I mean, it's gonna be tough to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this next pick, this is one of Williams' favorites, so you better be spamming up the comment sections. Micah Abraham, cornerback. When Rocket Sin left the Colts, it left a hole in my heart, right? Because I thought this was a guy with a high upside that just needed, the time to groom into the position. And with a guy like Micah Abraham, I think when you look at his size and the ability to to find the ball and to pretty much lock up a good piece of a weapon, and you pair him with Juju Brents, which is another young corner. I think you got potential. And when you look at Micah, I'm taking him over Tony Brown Jr. This is no slug to Tony Brown. I love him, but Micah Abraham was the pick to be this late in the draft with the ability he has. I love it. What was your thoughts on this pick?
Well, I mean, admittedly, I can't say I really watched too much Marshall film. Um, it's kind of
Shout out to
hard to
the
get a hold
herds.
of. Yeah, like I don't really have a ton on this guy. So there's not really too much I can really speak on other than, just looking at the production that he had. This is a guy in 3 years, 12 interceptions. And I think he had like 50 something passes defensed. So he seems like he's a guy that's just always around the ball. And he's not he it's going to be a tough uphill climb for him to make this roster, because you do have to factor in this, normally whenever you have smaller guys like
Yep,
that,
5'9". Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you have to have elite level speed like Isaiah Rodgers did. Isaiah Rodgers was a little bit of a smaller guy at cornerback, but he's a guy that's running, low 4.3s, maybe even 4.2. Um, this is a guy that he doesn't have that elite level speed, and I think that could hamper him. But the good news is he does seem to have really great ball instincts. He knows where he needs to be. Um, his dad is actually former NFL player and is a coach. He's a defensive coach at the St. Louis Battlehawks. So he's a guy like he's been coached up really well, basically, probably his entire life. He's a coach's son. He he knows where he needs to be. He's going to be in position to make plays, and he clearly has the ball skills to make plays whenever it does come his way. So the athleticism is going to be the biggest concern for me. And like the height, weight, speed, because normally cornerbacks, I mean, you almost have to you have to have an elite level athlete at corner to be an upper tier player, a starter in this league. So we'll see how it goes. But he's got a chance to he's got a chance to make it. Whenever you talk about a guy that can read and diagnose plays and can make plays on the ball, that's at the end of the game or at the end of the day, like that's the name of the game is, if you're in the right position more often than not, and you can come down with the ball or make plays on the ball, that's what it's all about. So we've seen how many times have we seen guys that have these Chris Ballard picks, for example, these high RAS scores, these crazy athletes, 9.95 athletes, and they never develop. They don't have the skills to do it. I think this is almost the opposite. I think he clearly has the skills and the production. He doesn't have the athleticism. So we're gonna find out. This is a great exercise in RAS versus on-field production. This is a great exercise.
Absolutely. I do think shout out to Donnie Abraham, and he was cousins with the former quarterback Tim Jennings. So shout out to him,
Another
and I do
small,
think
like, and Jennings was a smaller guy too who really
right.
produced.
I
So
do think he's going to have that backup nickel role. Just looking at his height and size, I do think he'll probably be a backup to Kenny Moore. But I do think he can have a chance to see the field, especially with the situation we had last year where everybody being banged up. I think he'll take the opportunity by storm. Granted, knock on wood, but I do think he has the potential to be fun, especially if you put him out there fast and quick and know how to track the ball. A lot of corners in that room does not have that experience yet, so we do need somebody to go track the ball and deflect it if the opportunity is granted. He is 5'9", but I do like the potential, and I do like the
yeah.
pick. It's a
And he
sleeper
did,
pick.
like,
So,
he ran a 4.43, so it's
right,
not like he's slow.
exactly.
Um, but that's like long speed. So when you get into like the explosion, the
Mm-hmm.
agility, the 10-yard split, it was
Right.
all kind of average to below average.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he does seem to have, like, a really good 40 time and all that, but some of his other metrics were, kind of poor in the testing numbers. So well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Last pick of the draft, defensive tackle pick. Jonah, you're gonna have to help me. Jonah Laulu. Did I say that right? Jonah Laulu.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds right? So that was the last pick of the draft, defensive tackle. Don't know how much playing time he'll play with them dogs we got up there. But we'll pray for him. Pray for the best. Might be a practice squad body at the end of the day. But I do not know if he'll see the field because like I said, we got straight dogs, athletes galore when it comes to that defensive line. So I don't know how much playing time he'll get in the future, but I mean I'll be definitely tracking him preseason
Yeah,
wise.
this is going to be the biggest uphill battle, I think, to make the roster,
Exactly,
because that
Laulu
defensive line room is just so deep.
is so
Uh,
deep.
but this is another, just high level athlete,
Hmm.
low level production. Um, so we'll see. It doesn't matter what round you're picked in, obviously.
Right.
Once you get out there on the field, if he gets out there in rookie mini camp or training camp or preseason and he's making plays, um, he's he, Laulu. Um, he has a chance to make this roster. So we'll see.
Yeah, but shout out to becoming a coach on draft night, though. I mean, that's the opportunity a lot of people don't get, so that's pretty dope just to hear your name called. So,
Yeah, and I'm not saying he can't make the. I mean,
right,
he
yeah,
clearly has the athletic
anything's possible.
upside.
Yeah,
Yeah, he has
it's
the
a
athletic
valid pick.
upside absolutely to make the roster. He
Yeah,
he like I said, he can come out and absolutely just dominate in camp, and,
he can
and
become my Grant Stewart. I'm a Grant Stewart groupie, man. Like watching him play, I was just like, yes, I need him on the field. I need
yeah,
him.
he's a guy that can come out, use that athleticism and that length and that power and all that, and he can come out and make some plays, and if he can do that, he'll make this roster for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So we're about to get up out of here, but I'm glad you said that, Jacob. Shout out to you. I was about to do the last three questions that we mentioned on the tweet and the notifications. Best quick, questionable pick, and sleeper pick. So, of course, you mentioned it already, but we got to do it again for the people, the latecomers that did not have their notifications on. We appreciate you still. Best pick in the draft. you can go ahead and mention it again. You can just say the name. You do not have to give a description, but it's totally up to you because it's just
Yeah,
your best pick. So
yeah,
it's up
my
to you.
best. I mean, it's like I do like to. It's the best pick in the draft because normally you don't get guys with his production and his measurables and all that. Those
Hmm.
guys don't fall to 15.
Yes.
Normally, those guys are taken top 5 in the draft. So, to me, if he can stay healthy, I think this guy can be defensive player of the year caliber.
Amen. Amen.
Not defensive rookie of the year,
Player of the
defensive
year, yes.
player of the year.
Hmm. I agree. And
He's
like
that
I
good.
said, he got the greatest supporting cast of all time with the voice partner next to him. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Man, what a day. What a day on draft night. My favorite pick, of course, is going to be 1A, 1B, but for sure, if I didn't have to choose that, my pick would be Anthony Gould. Backup would be Adonai Mitchell just because this was a guy that I had on the list that if he was available to just take him. But my favorite pick definitely was speedster Anthony Gould. I just had highlights dawned in my brain from the get go when his name was mentioned, like chucking up the deuces or smoking a Jacksonville Jaguar DB. Like all of those things were going through my mind already. So Anthony Gould was for sure my favorite pick. You guys let me know your favorite picks in the comment section. Next is the questionable pick. Questionable pick that had you like, I will go first. Of course, we already mentioned it, but
Gonzalez.
Gonsalves. Matt Gonsalves was my questionable pick. I was like, what is going on? I almost went to the bathroom, but after hearing that name, it made me go even more. I was like, you know what? Let me just walk out the door and take a breather because I'm pretty sure there was a name available that we could have got, but we wound up going offensive line depth, which is needed, but it definitely was a questionable pick at the time. But I didn't know until after the moment of the tangibles that he had, so I was like, okay. I just had to understand. But at first, when it was called, I was like, no way. Who was your questionable pick?
It was actually the same.
Okay.
I would say Gonzalez would have been my questionable pick, just because I think if they were going offensive line, especially interior, which I think is where he's going to end up playing at,
Mhm.
um, I think he's going to be a guard at this level. I thought there were better options on the table for
Right.
that,
Right.
especially in the third round, and especially some DBs as well. I
Yeah, I think
think
they traded up for him too, didn't
they did. They
they?
did, in
Yeah.
fact, trade up for him. So that would be my questionable pick. But I mean, I will say this: um, Chris Ballard has his positions,
Yeah.
that he struggles with.
Yep.
Offensive line is not one of them.
Amen. Amen.
He has a very, very strong track record of getting really good offensive line players. I
Yes.
think Ryan Kelly is the only offensive lineman that he did not draft.
Mhm.
And every other player, which I mean, I know like Quentin Nelson, I'm sure the comments will be like, well, everybody knew Quentin Nelson was good. Yeah, I get that. But I mean, you know, you look at Braden Smith, you look at Will Fries, you look at
Mhm.
Bernard Ryman, you know, even oh gosh, who was the backup center last year? What's his name?
Go for
Well, it wasn't Wesley
Wesley French.
French. No, it was the other one. He struggled at guard, but he was really good at center. I'm losing my brain.
So am I.
Um,
I'm
oh
about to look it
goodness.
up. I have the roster pulled up. Just give me a second.
But regardless, he has a very strong track
Jack
record.
Anderson,
No,
Josh Stills.
no.
He might not be in the roster anymore because I don't see him. I see Billy Freeland, Josh Stills, Wesley French, Jack Anderson, uh, Will Fries, and Ryan Kelly. Danny Pinter?
Yes, Danny Pinter.
Okay. Let's say because
Danny
he was
Pinter.
not on the
That's
roster.
Yep, yeah. Danny Pinter. He was another one that like he struggled at guard, but whenever he came in as a spot starter at center, he played really well. So Chris Ballard, as much as I question the pick, it's kind of hard for me to go against his offensive line track record.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
Danny
And the
Pinter.
last one is the sleeper pick. Who is your sleeper pick going into, it don't have to be next season, but just think who do you think will turn out to be probably the best out of everyone?
Um, I mean, Common. knowledge would say Anthony Gould,
Hmm.
but I'm going to go with Jalen Simpson.
Ooh,
I'm going to go with Simpson
I
just
like that.
because I really like his ability to diagnose plays and make plays on the ball and all that, and his athletic upside too.
Hmm.
I think that I think he has a chance if he can make this roster, because special teams is going to be a big part of him making this roster. And like I said, he's a guy that seems to have, he shies away from contact, and his tackling is not great. I don't even know if it's even good. It might just be bad. He's not a great tackler, but if he can become more physical, his tackling improves. He can play through special teams. If he can just get a shot, to make this roster and can play at free safety, I think he has some really good upside there. I think he could be a really good player.
My sleeper pick is going to be, of course, Tanner Butolini. We need it. We need the sleeper pick. We need him to step in and cause damage, wreak havoc, and be one of the best offensive linemen known to man with the best name and the best hairdo. So Tanner Butolini is going to be my sleeper pick. Of course, I cannot choose Gould because that'll be just bias of a pick. So I'm gonna go with Tanner. You guys let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in today. That was pretty much a wrap of the draft show. Recap: we already did talk about Kwity Paye and his fifth player option. We shouted out happy birthdays to Joseph Adai and Bernard Freeman. What was it? Blake Freeland birthday today?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Blake Freeland's
Good for
birthday.
him.
So shout out to Blake and
Also,
Joseph
Caitlin
Adai.
Clark is playing tonight, her
And
first
she is
game.
hooping
Yes, and
apparently.
she's already going off. 11
Yes.
points in 7 minutes.
Insane. Indy is on fire. Now all we need is the Colts to do the same type of damage next
Right.
year.
Anthony
Just give the ball to
Richardson,
Gould and get out the way.
save us.
Yeah,
Anthony
amen.
Richardson season.
Yeah, man. So we'll definitely see. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in. That is Landon. This is Culture Shock, and we will see you guys next time.